Ever imagine a lake, but like with its own underwater forest? And I don't just mean a few sunken logs, I'm talking a whole preserved forest.
Like something out of a fairy tale almost.
Right. So today we're diving deep, literally, into Lake Kaindy in Kazakhstan. And let me tell you, the pictures don't do it justice.
It's one of those places that truly captivates you, both for its beauty and the science behind it.
And lucky for us, we have a great source to pull from.
Definitely. This article from NURKZ really paints a picture of the place.
Yeah.
High up in the Tian Shan Mountains, this lake has a backstory that's almost explosive, you could say.
Explosive? Okay, you gotta elaborate on that.
I picture this. It's 1911, and this massive earthquake, we're talking magnitude 8.2, rips through the region.
Whoa, 8.2.
That's huge. And what many people don't realize is that the Richter scale, which measures these earthquakes, it's logarithmic. Each whole number increase isn't just a small jump. It means 10 times stronger in terms of wave amplitude.
So an 8.2 is...
It's off the charts in terms of energy released. Think about historically devastating earthquakes. This dwarfs them.
Wow, okay, so this earthquake basically reshaped the landscape, right?
Completely. And the article describes how this massive quake caused a colossal landslide. Imagine a whole mountainside just giving way, crashing down and blocking this river that flowed through the mountains.
Creating a dam,
A
essentially.
natural dam, almost instantaneously. And this is where Lake Kaindy comes in. The river, now blocked, starts backing up, filling this newly formed basin, and over time,
No.
you have a lake.
So from this cataclysmic event, a lake emerges. But it's what got submerged that really gets me an entire spruce forest. Just like that. Gone underwater.
Gone, but not decayed, which is the fascinating part. The article describes these ghostly trees, over a century old now, their trunks bleached white by the sun, poking out from the water's surface.
Haunting, but beautiful.
Exactly. But it's below the surface where things get really interesting.
It's like a whole hidden world down there. And the article mentioned something about the water preserving the trees, right?
Exactly. It's the lake's secret weapon, you could say. That frigid water, a constant 43 degrees Fahrenheit, it's like a natural preservative.
A natural preservative.
Think about it. That temperature is way too cold for the bacteria and microorganisms that normally break down wood. So the decomposition process, it basically hit the pause button. Divers who have gone down there describe it like something out of a fantasy novel, with branches draped in this fine silt, shimmering like, well, the article said, emerald necklaces.
Wow, I can just picture it, those emerald necklaces shimmering in the depths. It's incredible to think that those trees offer a glimpse into the past, frozen in time for over a century. It's like a time capsule of the ecosystem before the earthquake.
Exactly. And speaking of ecosystems, that's something I find particularly fascinating about Lake Kaindy. It's not just a pretty picture, it's a living laboratory, really.
A living laboratory, huh? Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this whole ecological side of Lake Kaindy.
Well, you've got to think. The earthquake, the formation of the lake, it didn't just create a pretty picture. It created a whole new ecosystem, totally unique, totally isolated.
Right, like a little pocket dimension.
Exactly. You've got the sunken forest, which is basically a snapshot of the past, frozen in time. But then you've got this whole other thing happening at the same time. You've got new life, new species, adapting to this, well, this unusual environment. The article even talks about the water itself, how it's incredibly pure, and how the color of the lake actually changes depending on the light.
Oh yeah, it's true. It's like a mood ring, that lake. One minute it's turquoise, the next it's this deep, almost an unnatural blue.
It's beautiful, and it's all because of the water's clarity.
So what, like, fewer impurities means?
Fewer impurities mean that light can penetrate deeper into the water. And the way that light reflects off the lake bed, off those submerged trees, that's what creates those color variations. The article also mentions something else pretty interesting, that I, for one, didn't know the name Kaindy. Apparently, it actually translates to, get this, abounding in birch.
Abounding in birch. So we're talking what? Birch trees galore around this place?
You've got it. Turns out there's this massive birch forest that leads right up to the lake's edge.
Wow, so even before you reach this, like, almost mythical lake, you're walking through a whole forest of birch trees. Talk about an entrance. But it makes you think, I mean, all these birch trees, it kind of hints at the bigger picture here, doesn't it?
Exactly. We're talking about biodiversity and how the earthquake, as destructive as it was, it also created new habitats. The lake itself, with its varying depths and temperatures, it supports a completely different variety of life compared to the flowing river that was there before.
So it really makes you wonder what kind of creatures are down there thriving in this sunken forest. Are there fish, like weaving in and out of those branches? What about insects? Are there unique insects that are drawn to this, like, perfectly preserved wood?
All fantastic questions, and honestly, those are the questions that I'd love to know more about. Unfortunately, the article focuses mainly on the visuals, the tourism aspect of Lake Candy.
The as-
Right, it doesn't really delve into any scientific studies or any specific findings about the ecosystem as it is now.
Which is a shame because it sounds like there's so much to discover there.
It really does. And it's not just Lake Candy either. The article also mentions the Kolsai Lakes, remember?
Oh, right, the Kolsai
And
Lakes.
they're a whole other story. These lakes were also formed by landslides, but we're talking way, way back, long before Lake Candy was even a glimmer in Mother Nature's eye.
So we've got these other lakes, the Kolsai Lakes, also formed by landslides, but like way older than Lake Kaindy.
Yeah, talk about ancient history. These lakes, they really show you how these natural forces, these massive geological events, how they play out over, well, over incredibly long periods of time.
It's mind-boggling, really.
Imagine these landslides that created the Kolsai Lakes. They probably happened centuries, maybe even millennia ago. It's hard to even fathom.
And now we have these stunning lakes. The article called them a chain of 3 lakes, all connected by a river, each with its own, like, unique personality.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that they're a stark contrast to Lake Kaindy. With Kaindy, you have that, well, that almost haunting beauty of the sunken forest. But the Kolsai Lakes, they're known for something completely different. Their incredible clarity and these mirror-like reflections.
The pictures I've seen are unreal. Like, is the sky even real?
Right. You can see everything reflected on the water's surface, the sky, the mountains, the forest surrounding the lake, like looking into another world.
And I bet those pictures, stunning as they are, they don't even come close to capturing what it feels like to actually be there, surrounded by that kind of natural splendor.
I can only imagine. And from what I gather, visiting both the Kolsai Lakes and Lake Candy, it's actually something you can do in a single trip. They're relatively close to each other, so you can really immerse yourself in that whole region.
That's awesome. Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, is there one thing, one big takeaway that you really hope our listeners, walk away with after learning about Lake Candy?
That's a good question. I think it's about perspective, really. The article we looked at, it focused mainly on the visual aspects of Lake Candy, right? And don't get me wrong, it's a breathtakingly beautiful place. But I think when you dig deeper, when you start to consider the geological forces at play, the ecological changes, the sheer time scale involved, it becomes so much more than just a pretty picture.
It's a story.
Exactly. It's a story of constant change, of destruction and creation. It's a reminder that our planet is a dynamic, ever-evolving place.
I love that. It's about appreciating the story behind the scenery, the unseen world beneath the surface. Well said.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's time for us to resurface from this deep dive. Hopefully, our listeners have a newfound appreciation for the wonders of Lake Kaindy and all its mysteries.
And who knows, maybe this will inspire some of them to explore it for themselves.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep exploring, everyone.